Keanu Reeves steps into a coffee shop for a quiet break, but his world shifts when he recognizes the frail woman behind the counter. His former nanny, Bel Vega, now 85, still working just to survive. Shocked, Keanu faces a painful reality. While he became a Hollywood icon, the woman who raised him struggles every day. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The soft chime of a bell echoed as Keanu Reeves stepped into the small coffee shop, seeking a quiet moment away from the relentless pace of the world outside. The warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of cinnamon and baked pastries. The place had a certain charm. Worn wooden floors, shelves lined with vintage teacups, and handwritten menus on chalkboards. It felt untouched by time, a hidden corner of Los Angeles that offered a rare moment of peace. Keanu adjusted his coat and stepped toward the counter. The barista, a young woman with a welcoming smile, greeted him. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get for you?" "Just a black coffee, please." His voice was calm, yet his mind was elsewhere. As he reached for his wallet, something caught his eye. An elderly woman moving carefully behind the counter. Her back was slightly hunched, her hands moving with the precision of habit, but weighed down by time. There was something strikingly familiar about the way she tucked a loose strand of gray hair behind her ear, the way she wiped her hands on her apron, the quiet patience in her movements. Keanu frowned slightly, feeling a strange pull of recognition. He watched as she filled a ceramic cup, her hands trembling slightly as she set it on the tray. Her face, though aged by time, carried the echoes of a memory he couldn't quite place. Until she turned. His breath caught in his throat. The name tag pinned to her apron read, Bel Vega. For a split second, the world around him faded, replaced by a cascade of long-buried childhood memories, the sound of laughter in the kitchen, the smell of warm bread fresh from the oven, the soft lullabies sung in Spanish on nights he couldn't sleep. He saw himself as a boy, small hands gripping the hem of her dress, pleading for just one more bedtime story. Could it really be her? His heart pounded. She was older now, her once dark hair now silver, her once strong posture slightly bent, her hands worn by years of work. But those eyes, those warm, compassionate eyes, hadn't changed. She approached his table, holding a steaming cup. "Here you go, sir," she said, her voice soft but carrying a quiet fatigue. Keanu stared at her, emotions swelling in his chest. Did she not recognize him? Then, with a gentle hesitance, he spoke. "Mari?" The moment the name left his lips, her hand froze, the tray trembling slightly. Slowly, she turned to face him fully. Her eyes met his, and in that instant, the years melted away. "Keanu," she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if afraid she might be imagining it. Her fingers flew to her lips, her eyes filling with tears. For a moment, she was no longer just an elderly woman working behind a counter. She was Mari, the woman who had held him when he cried, who had cared for him when he was sick, who had once been an irreplaceable part of his world. Keanu stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He didn't hesitate. He pulled her into an embrace, one filled with years of unspoken gratitude, of missed time, of love that had never faded. Mari clung to him, her frail frame shaking. "Oh, my sweet boy," she murmured, voice breaking. "Look at you. Look at what you've become." Keanu swallowed against the lump in his throat. "I can't believe it's you," he said, pulling back slightly to look at her. His eyes softened, but concern flickered beneath the surface. She wiped at her tears, smiling through them. Life has a strange way of bringing people back together. He noticed then the exhaustion in her features, the way her fingers trembled slightly, the dark circles beneath her eyes. This wasn't just an elderly woman keeping busy. This was someone who had no choice but to keep working. His chest tightened. Why was she still here? His voice dropped to a whisper, almost afraid of the answer. Mari, what are you doing here? She hesitated for a moment before offering a tired smile. Working, Keanu, like always. But the way she said it, the weariness in her voice, it told him everything. This wasn't a choice. This was survival. Keanu's hands curled into fists at his sides. This woman, who had once sacrificed so much to care for him, was now struggling, working 2 jobs at the age of 85 just to get by. His jaw tightened. This wasn't right. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. He had always believed in kindness, in helping those who had helped him. And Mari? She had been his protector once. Now it was his turn. Keanu pulled out a chair at a small corner table, motioning for Bel Vega to sit with him. She hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the counter as if unsure whether she could spare the time. I'm still on my shift, she murmured, her voice gentle, yet tired. Keanu gave her a reassuring smile. I'll take care of that. Before she could protest, Keanu turned toward the young barista behind the counter. Excuse me, he called out. Would it be all right if Mari took a short break? We have a lot of catching up to do. The barista, recognizing him, nodded quickly. Of course, take all the time you need. Mari sighed but relented, carefully untying her apron and folding it over her lap as she settled into the chair across from Keanu. He could see the hesitation in her expression, the quiet embarrassment of someone who had spent their whole life working and now wasn't used to sitting down for herself. You look good, Mari, Keanu said softly, studying her face. Despite the years that had passed, the kindness in her eyes remained the same. But there was something else there now, a deep exhaustion, a weight that hadn't been there before. Mari gave him a small smile, but she avoided his gaze, wiping her hands on the apron in her lap. It's been a long time, Keanu. You've done well for yourself. Keanu leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I had a lot of help. Her smile faltered, and she exhaled, finally meeting his eyes. I'm proud of you. A lump formed in Keanu's throat. This woman had been there for him when he was just a kid, before the fame, before the wealth. She had wiped away his tears, made him soup when he was sick, held him when the world felt too big and too frightening. And now, after all these years, she was here. Working at 85, her hands rough from labor. How had he let this happen? Keanu swallowed, forcing his voice to stay steady. How have you been, Mari? She hesitated. For a moment, she looked like she might brush off the question with a polite answer, but something in his expression made her pause. Her fingers gripped her apron a little tighter. I'm managing, Keanu. He didn't press, but he didn't look away either. He waited. Mari sighed, the weight of unspoken struggles pressing down on her shoulders. It's been hard, she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I work 2 jobs, this coffee shop in the mornings, and then I help clean offices at night. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. 2 jobs at 85. Why? The word came out before he could stop it. Mari gave a small chuckle, shaking her head. Because I have to. She reached for her cup of tea, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifted it. Keanu noticed the way she moved, slow, careful, as if every movement took more effort than it used to. Social security isn't enough, she continued, her tone matter-of-fact. Rent keeps going up, medical bills. She trailed off, shaking her head. Let's just say I can't afford to stop working. Keanu clenched his jaw. This wasn't right. She must have seen something shift in his expression because she reached out, placing her frail hand over his. But don't worry about me, Keanu. I've always been a survivor. I've never needed much. Keanu's gaze dropped to her hand. Her skin was thin now, her veins visible beneath the surface. These were the hands that had once tucked him in at night, that had braided his hair when he was little, that had held his face and told him he was loved. And now, Those same hands were still working themselves raw just to keep a roof over her head. He felt a deep pang of guilt. While he had spent years walking red carpets, traveling the world, living comfortably, Mari had been fighting just to survive. "You shouldn't have to do this, Mari," Keanu said, his voice tight. Mari patted his hand gently before withdrawing. "Life is what it is, mi niño. I don't complain. I have my health, I have my memories. I've lived a full life." Keanu shook his head. "That's not the point. You took care of me when I was little. You made sure I had everything I needed. And now, when it's your turn to rest, you're still working?" Mari smiled softly, but there was something bittersweet in it. "I never expected anything in return, Keanu. That's not why I took care of you." Keanu inhaled sharply. "But I do owe you. Not just because of what you did, but because you matter. You deserve better than this." Mari's expression shifted, a flicker of resistance. "Keanu," she said firmly, "I don't want charity." His jaw tightened. "This isn't charity, Mari. This is love." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Mari, stubborn and proud, unwilling to accept help. Keanu, heart aching, determined to find a way. "You don't understand," she finally whispered. "I've spent my whole life working. I wouldn't know what to do with myself if I stopped." Keanu took a slow breath. "Then let's find something better. Something that makes you happy." Mari tilted her head, curiosity flickering in her tired eyes. And what would that be? Keanu wasn't sure yet, but one thing was certain. He wasn't leaving this coffee shop without a plan. As Keanu walked out of the cafe and into the cool Los Angeles afternoon, his thoughts swirled in a storm of emotions. Bel Vega, the woman who had cradled him in her arms when he was just a child, was now struggling to survive at 85. The image of her tired hands, the weight in her voice, the quiet acceptance of her hardships, it all gnawed at him. He stopped near his car, resting his hands on the roof as he took a deep breath. This wasn't something he could just walk away from. Keanu pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the name he was looking for: Daniel Carter. Danielle was one of Keanu's closest friends, someone who had known him long before Hollywood fame. He was sharp, honest, and had a way of giving advice without sugarcoating things. If anyone could help Keanu figure out what to do next, it was him. The phone rang twice before Daniel answered. "Keanu!" "What's up, man?" Keanu exhaled, trying to organize his thoughts. "Hey, Danny, I just ran into someone. Someone from my past." There was a pause on the other end, as if Daniel could already sense the weight in Keanu's voice. "Who?" Keanu ran a hand through his hair. "Mari, my old nanny, the woman who raised me when I was little." Danielle sounded surprised. "Wait, you mean the one who used to make you those little empanadas when you were sick? The one who—" "Yeah, that Mari." Another pause, then, softer, "Wow, that's incredible. Where did you see her?" "She's working at a coffee shop." Silence. "Hold on, what? She's still working?" Daniel's voice sharpened. "Keanu, she must be in her 80s by now." Keanu nodded, though his friend couldn't see him. 85, and she has a second job cleaning offices at night. Daniel let out a low curse. "Man, that's heartbreaking." Keanu leaned against his car, staring at the passing traffic but seeing none of it. "I need to do something, Danny. I can't just let this slide." Daniel sighed. "I get it, man. She meant a lot to you. But you know how proud she is, right? You can't just throw money at this. It won't sit right with her." Keanu closed his eyes. "I know. That's what's been eating me up. I don't want to insult her by making it seem like a handout, but I also can't just do nothing." A long silence stretched between them before Daniel finally spoke. "Okay, so let's think this through. What's the goal here?" Keanu straightened, his voice firm. "To make sure Mari never has to work again. Ever." Daniel chuckled. "I figured that much, but how?" You're talking about a woman who's spent her whole life working. Just handing her a check isn't going to change that. Keanu frowned. I thought about buying her a house, but what if she refuses to take it? Or setting up a retirement fund, but she might see that as charity. There has to be a way to help her without making her feel like she's taking something she doesn't deserve. Daniel hummed thoughtfully. You need to give her something that doesn't feel like a favor, something that gives her purpose, but also lets her live comfortably. Keanu's mind began racing. Purpose, that was the key. Mari had spent her whole life taking care of others. Maybe that was why she didn't want to stop working, because she didn't know how to do anything else. Then, suddenly, an idea hit him. Danny, what if I give her something of her own? Daniel chuckled. You mean like a business? Because man, I gotta tell you, starting a business at 85 isn't exactly retirement. Keanu shook his head, already pacing. No, not a business she has to run, but something she can call her own, something she can be proud of without having to slave away every day. What if I open a small community cafe in her name, a place where she doesn't have to work, but where she can still be part of something, somewhere people can come and feel at home, just like she made me feel when I was a kid? Daniel was silent for a moment, then whistled low. That's actually brilliant. Keanu's heart pounded. It's perfect, right? She wouldn't feel like she's taking a handout because it would be her place. She could be there as much or as little as she wants. She could greet customers, sit and chat, drink her favorite tea, and finally just live. Daniel exhaled. Man, that's exactly the kind of thing she'd love. It's not just giving her money, it's giving her a legacy, something she can take pride in. Keanu nodded, already feeling a renewed sense of purpose. I need to make this happen, Danny. And I need to do it right. Daniel's voice was steady. Then let's get started. First thing you need is the perfect location. Something small, cozy, and in a community where she'd feel at home. Keanu's mind was already spinning with possibilities. I'll make some calls. I want this to be real, not just some grand gesture. I want her to feel safe, happy. Daniel chuckled. You're a good man, Keanu. If anyone can pull this off, it's you. Keanu took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what Mari would say when he told her. He wasn't sure if she would accept it or if she would resist. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let her spend another day struggling. Because this wasn't about charity, it was about love. A few days after their emotional reunion at the coffee shop, Keanu stood outside Mari's small apartment in a quiet, older neighborhood of Los Angeles. The building was one of those modest, aging complexes that had likely been built decades ago, with paint peeling off the walls and an elevator that probably hadn't worked in years. It was clear that Mari was living simply, perhaps too simply. Keanu took a deep breath and knocked. He didn't just come to see how she was living, he came to remember. The door creaked open, revealing Mari, still in her work uniform from the coffee shop. Her tired eyes lit up with warmth when she saw him. Keanu, you came, she said, smiling despite the fatigue on her face. Of course, Mari, Keanu said gently. I told you I wanted to catch up properly. She stepped aside to let him in, and as soon as Keanu crossed the threshold, a wave of nostalgia washed over him. The apartment smelled of cinnamon and chamomile, scents he somehow recognized from his childhood. The space was small but immaculately clean. The furniture was old yet well-maintained, and the decorations were simple. A few faded photos were tucked into the corners of a wooden shelf. One of them was of Keanu as a child, sitting in Mari's lap, his little arms wrapped around her neck. His throat tightened. Mari, he said, glancing around, this place is cozy, but... He trailed off, not wanting to insult her home. Mari smiled knowingly as she walked toward the small kitchenette. It's not much, but it's mine. She motioned for him to sit at the tiny dining table. Keanu took a seat as Mari shuffled to the stove and, out of habit, started making tea, just as she always did when he was younger. You used to do that when I got home from school, Keanu murmured, watching her. Mari chuckled. You always had so much energy. I needed to calm you down somehow. As she poured the tea, she looked at him thoughtfully. "Tell me something, Keanu. You've done so much with your life. You've gone places I never even dreamed of. Do you ever think back on those days?" Keanu leaned back, a soft smile playing on his lips. "Mari, I think about those days all the time." They sat for hours, drinking tea and reminiscing about the past. Keanu couldn't stop smiling as Mari recounted stories from his childhood, things he hadn't thought about in years. "Do you remember how you used to hate wearing shoes?" she asked with a chuckle. Keanu laughed, shaking his head. "Oh no! What did I do?" "Every single morning, without fail, I would put your shoes on before we left the house, and the second we got to the park, you would take them off and run barefoot through the grass. You hated them so much that you once threw one into the lake. Do you know how long I had to fish it out?" Keanu covered his face with his hands, his laughter deep and genuine. "I don't remember that." Mari smirked. "Oh, I do. And I learned very quickly to carry an extra pair of socks with me at all times." As they laughed, Keanu's eyes landed on a small wooden music box sitting on a shelf. It looked old, the paint slightly chipped, but it was well cared for. "Mari, is that the same music box from when I was little?" Mari followed his gaze and nodded fondly. "Yes, you used to ask me to play it every night before bed, and if I ever forgot, oh, the tantrum you would throw." Keanu's smile softened as he reached for the box and carefully opened the lid. A familiar, delicate melody began to play, a song Mari used to hum whenever he was scared or couldn't sleep. "I remember this," he whispered. "You used to sing it to me." Mari's eyes twinkled as she leaned back in her chair. "It was the only thing that could calm you down when you had nightmares." Keanu looked up at her, his chest tight with emotion. "You did so much for me, Mari. More than I ever realized as a kid." Mari smiled, reaching across the table to pat his hand. "You were always a good boy, Keanu. A wild one, but a good one." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea, lost in the past. As much as Keanu cherished these memories, there was a painful truth lurking beneath them. Mari had spent her entire life taking care of others. She had devoted herself to raising children who weren't her own, sacrificing her own comforts to make sure they felt loved. And now, at 85, she had no one taking care of her. It wasn't fair. Keanu set down his cup and looked at Mari with quiet determination. "Mari, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She tilted her head. "Of course, dear. What is it?" He took a deep breath. "Do you ever regret it? Taking care of me? Working all those years?" Mari's expression softened as she shook her head. "Keanu, taking care of you was one of the greatest joys of my life. I wouldn't change a thing." He swallowed, nodding. "But now, you're still working. You're still struggling. And that's not okay with me." Mari sighed, setting down her teacup. "I've always managed, Keanu. I don't need much." Keanu leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. "Mari, you deserve more than just managing. You deserve rest, comfort, happiness." Mari looked down at her hands, silent. For the first time, Keanu saw a flicker of vulnerability in her expression. "It's been hard, hasn't it?" he pressed gently. She nodded slowly. "Some days are harder than others, but I never wanted to be a burden to anyone." Keanu reached across the table and took her hand. "Mari, you're not a burden. You're family." Her eyes glistened, and for a long moment she said nothing. Keanu's heart pounded as he made a silent vow. He was going to make this right. Because this wasn't just about repaying kindness. It was about honoring the person who helped shape him into the man he was today. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through the small windows of Mari's modest apartment, casting a soft golden hue over the neatly arranged furniture. Though clean and carefully maintained, everything about the space spoke of a life of frugality. Faded floral curtains, an old couch with a well-worn quilt draped over it, and a small wooden dining table with mismatched chairs. It was cozy, but it was clear that Mari was living with only the bare essentials. Keanu sat across from her at the small table, their empty teacups between them. He took in every detail: the neatly folded dish towel on the counter, the aging refrigerator covered in old photos and magnets, the faint scent of lavender that lingered in the air. This was her world, and she deserved more. "You know," Mari said with a nostalgic smile, "I still remember the first time I met you. You were the quietest little boy, so serious, so curious. But the moment I picked you up, you clung to me like you had known me forever." Keanu chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Really? I always thought I was a handful." Mari's eyes twinkled. "Oh, you were. You had a stubborn streak the size of Canada, but you had the kindest heart. Even as a child, you couldn't stand to see anyone sad. You used to bring me little flowers from the garden every morning." Keanu exhaled, shaking his head with a soft smile. "I don't remember that." Mari laughed, standing up slowly and shuffling toward a small wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. "Well, I do." She pulled out a small scrapbook, its cover worn and slightly frayed. "Here, let me show you something." Keanu took the book as she handed it to him. He opened it carefully, his breath catching in his throat as he flipped through the pages. Inside were memories, photographs, letters, and tiny pressed flowers. One picture showed a young Keanu, no more than 5 years old, clinging to Mari's hand at the park. Another was a candid shot of him napping on her lap, his tiny fingers gripping her sleeve. There were handwritten notes, too, small messages in shaky childhood handwriting. "Mari, I love you. Thank you for making me pancakes. You are the best." Keanu ran his fingers over the faded ink, his chest tightening. "You kept all of this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mari nodded, her eyes misty. "Of course I did. You were my boy. I may not have given birth to you, but you were still mine in so many ways." Keanu swallowed hard, his heart swelling with emotion. He turned another page, revealing a crumpled old recipe card. "Oh, wow," Keanu murmured, tracing the faded ink. "Your Sunday pancakes." Mari chuckled. "Every Sunday morning, without fail, you'd climb onto the counter and say, 'Mari, pancakes, please,' and you wouldn't leave the kitchen until you got the first bite." Keanu laughed, the warmth of the memory wrapping around him like a blanket. "You were the only one who ever made them right." Mari gave him a playful nudge. "That's because I made them with love." The room fell into a comfortable silence, both of them lost in the past. Then Keanu spoke, his voice softer now. "Mari, you didn't just take care of me. You shaped me." Mari tilted her head, surprised. "You taught me how to be patient when I was frustrated." Keanu's gaze was distant, thoughtful. "You taught me how to be kind, even when the world wasn't. When I was scared, you always found a way to make me feel safe." Mari reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You always had a good heart, Keanu. I just helped it grow." As much as Keanu cherished these memories, there was a painful reality he couldn't ignore. Mari had spent her entire life giving to others, sacrificing her own comforts to care for children like him. And now, in her later years, she was left with nothing. Still working, still struggling. He closed the scrapbook gently, setting it aside before meeting Mari's eyes. "Mari, can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Of course." Keanu hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "When you were younger, did you ever dream of retiring? Of traveling? Of having time just for yourself?" Mari smiled wistfully. "Oh, I used to dream about a little house by the ocean, somewhere quiet, where I could sit and listen to the waves." Keanu's chest tightened. She had dreamed of peace, and instead she was spending her days working behind a counter, exhausted. "Mari," he said softly, "if you could have that now, would you want it?" Mari's expression shifted, a mixture of hope and hesitation. "Oh, Keanu, that kind of life isn't meant for people like me. I've always worked, that's just how life is." Keanu shook his head. "No, that's how life has been, but that's not how it has to stay." Mari's brow furrowed slightly. "Keanu, I don't need charity. It's not charity, Keanu insisted. It's love. It's gratitude. It's the least I can do for everything you've done for me. Mari sighed, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for her cup. I wouldn't even know what to do with myself if I wasn't working. Keanu leaned forward. You would live, Mari. You would finally rest. I promise. Keanu stood up, pacing the small space. His mind was racing with ideas. He needed to make sure Mari never had to struggle again. But Daniel was right. He couldn't just throw money at the situation. Mari was proud. This had to be done in a way that respected her independence. Keanu turned back to her, his expression serious. Mari, listen to me. I don't want to just hand you a check and walk away. I want to help you build a life that's yours. A life where you wake up every day and do whatever makes you happy. Mari folded her hands, her gaze searching his. And what if work makes me happy? Keanu exhaled, nodding. Then let's find something you love. Something that doesn't exhaust you. Something that lets you enjoy life. Mari was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a soft chuckle, she said, You've always been stubborn, Keanu. Keanu grinned. I learned from the best. They sat there for a while, letting the conversation settle. Finally, Keanu reached across the table and took Mari's hands in his. I promise you, Mari, I won't let you keep struggling. You deserve more than that. Mari's eyes filled with emotion. She looked at Keanu for a long time, as if searching his face for sincerity. And then, for the first time in years, she let herself believe it was possible. The warm afternoon sun bathed the quiet neighborhood in golden light as Keanu Reeves pulled up to a quaint little house by the ocean. The air smelled of salt and freedom, a gentle breeze rustling the palm trees that lined the property. The sound of the waves in the distance gave the place a soothing, almost dreamlike atmosphere. Keanu stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment Mari's life would change forever. Mari sat in the passenger seat, fidgeting nervously with her hands. She had no idea where they were. Keanu had simply shown up at the cafe that morning, a knowing smile on his face, and told her he had a surprise. She had protested, of course. Keanu, I'm too old for surprises. But Keanu had only chuckled. You're never too old for good things, Mari. Just trust me. And so here they were. Keanu walked over to the passenger side and opened the door. He held out his hand. Come on, Mari. Let's go inside. Mari hesitated. Inside where? Keanu grinned. Just come see. She slowly stepped out, her frail hands gripping his for support. As they approached the front porch, Mari's eyes darted around, taking in the charming white house with blue shutters, the cozy front yard, the wooden swing hanging from the porch beam. There was something about it that made her heart ache, like an old dream she had buried long ago. Keanu pulled a small bronze key from his pocket and held it out to her. This is yours, Mari. She blinked. Mine? What do you mean? Keanu gently placed the key in her palm. Your home. Your space. A place where you don't have to work to survive. A place where you can finally rest. For a moment, Mari didn't move. She just stared at the key in her hand, as if trying to convince herself this was real. Then, with trembling fingers, she turned the doorknob and stepped inside. The moment she crossed the threshold, tears welled in her eyes. The house was warm and welcoming, filled with light and laughter even in its stillness. A soft beige couch sat in the living room, with handmade blankets folded neatly over the armrest. A kitchen filled with brand new appliances gleamed in the afternoon light. The wooden shelves were already lined with her favorite books, and a small reading nook was set up in the corner with a comfortable chair. Mari walked slowly, her hand tracing over the smooth surfaces, the polished wood of the dining table, the delicate floral curtains. Keanu followed quietly, watching as she took it all in. She paused in the hallway, her gaze falling on a framed picture on the wall. It was a photo of the two of them, taken decades ago. In it, a young Keanu, no older than 6, sat on Mari's lap, grinning with messy hair. A choked sob escaped her lips. "You remembered," she whispered. Keanu stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Of course I remembered. Every Sunday morning. Pancakes, lullabies, the way you always held me when I had nightmares." She turned to him, her wrinkled face filled with overwhelming emotion. "Keanu, this is too much. I don't deserve all this." Keanu frowned, shaking his head. "Mari, listen to me. You have spent your entire life giving. You never asked for anything in return. You don't just deserve this, you always have." Mari wiped at her tears, her hands still trembling. "But a whole house, Keanu? I can't accept this." Keanu took a step closer, his voice soft but firm. "You can, and you will." Mari exhaled shakily, turning in a slow circle to take in the home once more. But Keanu wasn't done. "Mari," he said, reaching into his jacket. "There's one more thing." He pulled out a thick, elegant document bound in a leather folder and held it out to her. Mari hesitated before taking it, her fingers brushing over the cover. "What is this?" she asked. Keanu smiled. "The Bel Vega Foundation." Her breath caught in her throat. "Foundation?" Keanu nodded. "I set it up in your name. It's going to help elderly workers who are still struggling, just like you were. It's going to make sure no one has to spend their last years working themselves into exhaustion just to survive." Mari flipped open the folder, her eyes widening at the words printed inside. Her name, her story. The mission statement outlining how it would provide housing, medical assistance, and financial aid to elderly workers who had spent decades in service industries. Her hand flew to her mouth, her whole body trembling. Keanu reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Mari, this isn't just for you. This is for all the people like you, people who gave their lives to raising kids, cleaning homes, taking care of families that weren't even their own. It's time the world gave something back to them." Mari let out a sob, covering her face as the emotions overtook her. Keanu guided her to sit on the couch as she wept uncontrollably into her hands. "I don't deserve all this," she whispered, her voice broken with disbelief. Keanu kneeled in front of her, taking her hands in his. "You do. You always have." Mari squeezed his hands tightly, her entire body shaking. She had never asked for anything in her life. She had worked, struggled, survived, always believing that was just how life was. But for the first time, someone was giving back to her. And not just someone. Keanu, the little boy she had raised, the child she had sung to sleep, the boy who had grown into a man with the kindest heart. Tears ran freely down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of gratitude, of love, of relief. She looked up at Keanu, her eyes shining with unspeakable emotion. "Thank you, mijo." Her voice was small, but full of immeasurable depth. Keanu smiled, his own eyes misty. "Always, Mari." That evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Mari sat on her new porch, wrapped in a soft, hand-woven blanket. Keanu sat beside her, watching the waves roll in. For the first time in decades, Mari felt at peace. No shift to wake up for, no aching exhaustion waiting for her at dawn. Just her home, her life, her freedom. She reached for Keanu's hand, squeezing it gently. "You really changed my life, Keanu." Keanu smiled, gazing at the horizon. "No, Mari, you changed mine first." The world moves fast, but some stories slow it down. Some stories remind people of what truly matters. And that's exactly what happened when news of Keanu Reeves' incredible act of kindness spread like wildfire. At first, it was just a simple social media post, a blurry picture taken by a cafe customer, showing Keanu embracing Mari Bel Vega outside the small coffee shop where she had worked tirelessly for years. The caption was simple but powerful. Keanu Reeves just reunited with his childhood nanny and did something unbelievable for her. The post began to gain traction, shared by fans who admired Keanu not just for his films, but for his well-known humility and kindness. But what really made it explode into a viral sensation was the next photo that surfaced. A teary-eyed Mari standing in the doorway of her new home, clutching the keys in her frail hands. Within hours, major media outlets picked up the story. Headlines flooded the internet. Keanu Reeves surprises former nanny with a home and foundation in her name. Hollywood star proves that kindness is more than just a word. Keanu's heartwarming gift sparks a movement for elderly workers. Everywhere people looked, they saw Mari's face. Her soft, wrinkled smile, her eyes full of gratitude, and her unwavering spirit. TV anchors recounted the story with tears in their eyes. Journalists praised Keanu's generosity, and social media users couldn't stop sharing their own experiences about underappreciated caretakers, nannies, and domestic workers who had sacrificed everything for the families they served. Even celebrities began weighing in. This is what real heroes do. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. More people in power should follow Keanu's lead. Sandra Bullock. This story made me cry. Let's make sure no elderly person has to work just to survive. Oprah Winfrey. The attention wasn't just emotional, it was impactful. Donations started pouring in from strangers who wanted to be part of something bigger. Within just 1 week, the Bel Vega Foundation had raised over $5 million. But it didn't stop there. A luxury hotel chain announced a $500,000 contribution, promising to offer free housing to retired domestic workers. A tech billionaire pledged to cover the medical expenses of 100 elderly caregivers through the foundation. A group of former Hollywood child actors, now grown, shared heartfelt tributes to the nannies and caretakers who raised them, sparking a new social movement called Honor Your Caretakers. For the first time, elderly caretakers, housekeepers, and nannies, the unseen backbone of so many families, were being recognized for their sacrifices. A week after moving into her new home, Mari received an unexpected call. It was from the Ellen DeGeneres Show. They wanted her to come on the show and share her story with the world. At first, Mari hesitated. She had never been on TV before. "I don't belong on a stage, Keanu," she told him nervously. Keanu, sitting beside her on the porch, gently took her hand. "Mari, your story matters, and people need to hear it." With his reassurance, she agreed. And so a few days later, Mari found herself on a plane for the first time in decades, traveling to Los Angeles, not to work, not to struggle, but to be celebrated. When she stepped onto the set of The Ellen Show, the audience erupted into cheers, giving her a standing ovation before she even reached her seat. Mari, overwhelmed, wiped at her eyes as Ellen took her hands. "Mari, the whole world has fallen in love with you. How does it feel?" Mari laughed softly, still adjusting to the attention. "It feels strange. I never thought anyone would care about an old lady like me." The audience awed, and Ellen shook her head. "You're not just an old lady, Mari. You're a reminder that hard work, love, and kindness should never go unnoticed." They showed clips of Keanu's surprise, the moment he handed her the house keys, the instant she first saw the foundation documents. When the footage ended, Mari was openly crying, and so was most of the audience. Ellen leaned forward, her voice thick with emotion. "If you could say one thing to Keanu right now, what would it be?" Mari took a deep breath and looked straight into the camera. "Keanu, my sweet boy, thank you for remembering me. Thank you for loving me. You changed my life, but I want the world to know you've always been this kind. Even as a child, you were special, and now you've made sure that I and so many others will never be forgotten again. I love you, Mio." The audience cheered as Ellen handed Mari a $50,000 donation check from a sponsor contributing to the Bel Vega Foundation. The story had gone beyond just Keanu and Mari. It had become a movement. More than 1,000 elderly workers applied for assistance from the foundation in its first month. Retired housekeepers were given free housing and medical care. Former caretakers were reunited with the children they had once raised, now successful adults eager to give back. Legislation discussions began in several states, pushing for higher wages and retirement benefits for caretakers. Keanu had set something in motion that was bigger than he had ever imagined. Mari's final words. Weeks later, Mari sat on her porch watching the sunset. She wasn't tired anymore. She wasn't worried about rent or medical bills. For the first time in years, she was at peace. Keanu sat beside her, sipping his tea. "You're a star now, Mari," he teased. Mari chuckled, shaking her head. "I never wanted to be famous, Keanu." He smiled. "You're not famous for being famous. You're famous for being loved." Mari looked out at the sky, the wind gently playing with her gray curls. "I hope," she whispered, "that this foundation helps people long after I'm gone. I hope it reminds the world that love and kindness are the greatest things we can leave behind." Keanu looked at her, admiration in his eyes. "It already has, Mari." Months had passed since Keanu had first stumbled into that small coffee shop in Los Angeles, unknowingly walking back into a piece of his childhood. So much had changed since that day. Bel Vega was no longer a woman standing behind a counter, exhausted from endless shifts, struggling to make ends meet. She was home. The house Keanu had gifted her had become her sanctuary, a place where she no longer worried about rent, bills, or long hours on her feet. She had finally been given the gift of rest, something she had denied herself for decades. But today she wasn't alone. Keanu stepped through the garden gate, a soft smile on his face as he carried a small bouquet of flowers. He had visited Mary often over the past few months, but today felt different, almost like a new chapter in both of their lives. Mari sat in a wooden rocking chair on her back porch, the warm afternoon sunlight casting golden hues across her face. She looked healthier, her cheeks fuller, her silver hair neatly tied back. She saw him coming and immediately broke into a radiant smile. "Mijo," she said warmly, standing up with some effort as Keanu rushed forward to help. "You always bring flowers." "Well," he teased, placing them into her waiting hands, "you deserve them." They sat down together on the porch, looking out at the garden. Keanu had made sure the house had a beautiful outdoor space, knowing how much Mari loved flowers. Now, she had a small haven, complete with rose bushes and a tiny vegetable patch she had started growing. She glanced at him, studying him for a moment before speaking. "You know, Keanu," she said softly, "I always knew you'd grow up to do something amazing. I just never imagined it would be for me." Keanu's heart clenched at her words. She had given him so much, her time, her patience, her love. She had shaped him into the man he was today, yet she spoke as if she had expected nothing in return. He shook his head, his voice thick with emotion. "Mari, you were the first person who ever made me feel truly safe. I don't know if I would have turned out the way I did without you." She reached over and gently patted his hand, her touch as warm as it had been when he was a child. "You were always special, Keanu," she said. "Even as a little boy, you had this kindness in you. It was never just about you. You always thought about others." Keanu let out a small laugh, shaking his head. "If that's true, it's only because I had you to show me how." Looking back on a lifetime. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as birds flitted between the trees. The peace of the moment was something neither of them took for granted. "Do you remember," Mari said after a while, "how you used to cry if I didn't sing you to sleep?" Keanu laughed at the memory, shaking his head. "I remember you used to sing that Spanish lullaby. What was it?" Mari smiled, her voice soft as she hummed the familiar tune. Duerme que bien el coco ya. Chile. The sound of it sent a wave of nostalgia through Keanu. That lullaby had been his comfort on countless nights when his mother was working late, or when the world felt too big for a little boy. "I haven't heard that in years," he murmured. Mari chuckled. "You were so stubborn as a child. You wouldn't close your eyes until I sang it at least 3 times. Keanu grinned. "Sounds about right." They continued sharing memories, from burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings to the way Mari used to chase him around the house when he refused to put on his shoes. Each story was a thread in the fabric of their history, a testament to the bond that had never truly broken. As the afternoon stretched into early evening, Keanu noticed how relaxed Mari seemed now. There was no exhaustion weighing down her shoulders, no stress lining her face. She had finally been given the peace she deserved. "How's the foundation doing?" she asked, referring to the Bel Vega Foundation, which had taken off in ways neither of them had expected. Keanu smiled. "It's growing every day. We've already helped over 500 elderly workers get the support they need." Mari's eyes glistened with emotion. "I still can't believe it's named after me." Keanu's expression turned serious. "You deserve to be remembered, Mari. You, and so many others like you, deserve more than just thank yous. You deserve security, comfort, respect." She reached for his hand again, squeezing it gently. "Thank you, mijo. Not just for this house or the foundation, but for remembering me." Keanu swallowed past the lump in his throat. "I could never forget you, Mari. Never." One last surprise. As they sat in the fading sunlight, Keanu pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I have one last thing for you." Mari eyed it warily. "Keanu, you've already done too much." "Just open it," he urged with a smirk. With a sigh, she took the box and opened it. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small charm in the shape of a house. Engraved on the back were the words, "Mi hogar siempre estará contigo." "My home will always be with you." Tears welled in Mari's eyes as she ran her fingers over the engraving. "Keanu, this is beautiful." He gently took the necklace from the box and fastened it around her neck. "Now, no matter where you go, you'll always know you have a home." Mari wiped at her eyes, overcome with emotion. "I don't deserve all this," she whispered. Keanu cupped her hands in his gaze steady. "You do, Mari. You always have." As night fell, Keanu stood up to leave, but Mari stopped him with a final request. "Before you go, can I sing to you one last time?" Keanu froze for a moment, then slowly sat back down, nodding. And so, under the starlit sky, Mari hummed the same lullaby she had once sung to a little boy who had grown into a man who never forgot where he came from. Keanu closed his eyes and listened, letting the warmth of her voice wrap around him like a memory that would never fade. And in that moment, they weren't just nanny and child. They were family. Always had been, always would be. Gratitude is more than just a feeling. It is an action. It is the way we acknowledge those who have shaped us, those who have sacrificed and given us the foundation to build our lives upon. Keanu Reeves understood this truth. What he did for Bel Vega was not just a grand gesture. It was a demonstration of true gratitude, a testament to the idea that no one should be left behind, especially not those who once cared for us. But this story is not just about Keanu and Mari, it's about all of us. Many of us go through life without truly stopping to reflect on the people who helped shape us. A childhood teacher who believed in us, a grandparent who offered us wisdom, a friend who stood by our side during difficult times. These people may not expect anything in return, just like Mari never expected Keanu to come back into her life. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't take the opportunity to give back. For years, Mari had sacrificed her own comfort and well-being to take care of others. Even when she was struggling financially, even when life had been unfair to her, she never complained. She kept working, kept pushing forward, because that's what survivors do. And yet, survivors deserve more than just survival. They deserve to live. When Keanu saw her again, still working at 85, still fighting for every dollar, it shattered him. How could someone so important in his life be living like this, while he had the means to help? He had a choice. He could have walked away, left a generous tip, and continued on with his busy life. But true gratitude doesn't stop at words. Keanu took action. He changed Mari's life forever. But beyond that, he set something in motion that would help countless others. The Bel Vega Foundation started as a way to honor one woman, but it became so much more. When the media discovered Keanu's act of generosity, it sparked something deep in the hearts of people everywhere. The story went viral, and suddenly the world was talking not just about Keanu, but about the millions of elderly workers who were still struggling in silence. People began donating to the foundation, wanting to be a part of something bigger. Other celebrities and philanthropists followed Keanu's example, setting up similar initiatives to help those who had spent their lives taking care of others. And most importantly, regular people, people like you and me, started looking at the elders in their lives differently. How many of us have a Mari in our lives? A grandmother who still works long hours because she has no savings? A neighbor who never had the chance to retire? A family friend who struggles in silence? Keanu's actions reminded the world that we have the power to make a difference, no matter how big or small. In today's world, we often measure success by what we achieve for ourselves. We chase financial security, career milestones, personal goals, always looking forward, always striving for more. But true success isn't just about what we gain. It's about what we give. It's about looking back and recognizing the people who helped us get here. Mari never asked for recognition. She never asked for a reward. But that didn't mean she didn't deserve one. And the truth is, there are so many Maras in the world today. People who have spent their whole lives giving to others, only to find themselves struggling when they should be resting. Keanu's story is a wake-up call. It's a reminder that the people who shaped us, who gave us love, who made us who we are, they deserve more than just our memories. They deserve our help. Not everyone has the financial power of a Hollywood star, but everyone can make a difference in their own way. Here's how. Reach out to the elders in your life. Give them a call. Visit them. Ask them how they're really doing. Sometimes just knowing someone cares makes all the difference. Offer help in small ways. Maybe it's running errands for an elderly neighbor, or simply offering company to someone who feels forgotten. Support programs that assist elderly workers. There are many organizations dedicated to helping seniors retire with dignity. Even small donations or volunteer work can change lives. Advocate for better support systems. Many elderly workers struggle because of broken social systems. Raising awareness, voting for policies that protect them, and supporting retirement initiatives can create long-term change. The Bel Vega Foundation started with one person, but it turned into a movement of kindness. And you can be a part of it. Keanu didn't just remember Mari, he changed her life. And in doing so, he reminded all of us that gratitude isn't passive, it's active, it's about doing something. He didn't just thank her. He didn't just look back fondly. He took action. And now, that action is rippling across the world, inspiring thousands of people to give back, to care for those who once cared for them. What about you? Who in your life deserves to be remembered? Who helped shape you, teach you, care for you? And what can you do to show your gratitude today? If this story touched your heart, if you believe in kindness and gratitude, don't just listen, be part of the movement. Hit like to show your support for this message. Subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire real change. Share this video to spread awareness, because someone out there needs to hear this today. Together, we can make the world a kinder, more compassionate place. Thank you for watching, and remember, gratitude is more than a feeling, it's a choice.